Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Packers Unscripted from Packers.com. I am Mike Spofford, joined, as always, by my trusted colleague, Wes Hodkiewicz, coming to you here from our studios at Lambeau Field to talk about Sunday night's game down in Dallas, Wes. It ended in a 40-40 overtime tie, and I've probably begun a number of shows over our, what is this now, close to 10 years or something, doing this show, with this particular line. Just when you think you've seen it all in this league, another game gets played.
Yeah.
And this is another one of those games that nobody could have predicted. It was off the wall in so many ways. And there's a ton of ground to cover in this show, and I don't think we're going to be able to get to all of it. But just initially, your overall impressions of how this game went down.
The first ever 40-40 game in NFL history. The second highest tie ever in NFL history. The Dallas Cowboys' first tie since 1969.
1969.
Nice. And I'll be honest with you, Mike, as I came to terms with this and we finished all of our content, you and I are flying through the night and get back into Green Bay at a little before 4 in the morning. I was walking to my car and I thought to myself, after writing everything, reading everything, just kind of like going through everything, it was one of those games where really, truly nobody, I think, deserved to win. When you and I say that actually not just from a point of, being a contrarian. I mean, you look at both of these sides, there's a compelling argument for why the Dallas Cowboys should have won and why the Green Bay Packers should have won. And neither team achieved the goal.
Right.
From the Cowboys' perspective, I don't know the stat exactly off my head, but I think it was the first time, at least, is it in their franchise? Yeah, it was in their franchise's history. I think Domofsky was the one that tweeted this out, that they scored over 400 points with
400
total yards with 40 points.
Yeah.
And didn't have a turnover. It was the first time they didn't win that game in franchise history. I think they're now it's like 300-0-1 when they've achieved those measurements. From the Packers standpoint, the really bizarre thing about this first month, Mike, they've started fast in all these games for the most part. I mean, they have got on the board, they've put points up, and then they've had these moments where, whether it's the blocked field goal or the blocked extra point in this game, or that bizarre series of events at the end of the first half where you go from leading 13-2 and now you're trailing 16-13 at halftime.
Right.
And then in Green Bay kind of still found ways to get the offense going, but then defensively then they couldn't stop Dallas in the second half. Just a very bizarre game on so many fronts. And I thought a lot of guys afterwards, you were at the press conferences, I was in the locker room, and the common sentiment in the Packers locker room, it just was a weird night, a weird game. And the only silver lining you can take from it is the Packers walked out of there with a tie. And in 2013, that was the difference between them getting into the playoffs or not. And the Packers have to keep winning and hope that it's something that could propel them forward down the line.
Yeah, I mean, we'll just have to see. I think it was you quoted Brandon McManus in the locker room afterwards saying, you just have to see come December, early January, what a tie on the record means, as you're trying to sort out the all of the postseason, end of season scenarios. I've certainly never seen a game, or I can't recall one, where the last 9 consecutive possessions in the football game all resulted in points. And actually it was 6 touchdowns in a row as these teams went back and forth. In my mind, there are similarities to the game against Cleveland. There are also significant differences. The similarities being there was another costly special teams breakdown in getting a kick blocked. This one was an extra point that the Cowboys ran back for 2 points. So in a sense, it was the equivalent of getting a field goal blocked because it was a 3-point swing on the scoreboard. The Packers had scored a touchdown and essentially netted only a +4 on the scoreboard because they didn't get the extra point and the Cowboys got 2. So that was one similarity. Another similarity was, as you alluded to, a somewhat catastrophic error offensively in terms of a turnover deep in your own territory, giving the other team a short field. They end up scoring a touchdown. The difference was that, at least in this case, compared to Cleveland, that big mistake on offense happened at the end of the first half, not at the end of the game. So the Packers had an entire second half to try to make up for it. And they sort of did and sort of didn't in terms of being able to get out of Dallas with a tie when they went into the locker room at halftime losing. I think for everything that went wrong in this game, what rises to, I would say, maybe the largest level of concern for me as far as what I saw was a Packers defense that had played so well for 3 weeks and started this game so well with 3 consecutive scoreless possessions, forcing 3 straight punts. Suddenly the Cowboys drove 95 yards. They're pinned on their own 5-yard line. They go the length of the field, 95 yards for a touchdown in the second quarter. And then it just felt like Green Bay's defense never recovered from it. You know, they took a big punch. Dak Prescott threw a haymaker with that 95-yard drive and basically announced, okay, yeah, this Cowboys offense has shown up to play tonight. And it felt like Green Bay's defense just never responded to that. Now, it's just one game, and certainly the bulk of the work of Green Bay's defense over the course of this young season has been much more good than bad. But that was troubling to watch, to feel like Green Bay's defense never recovered from the moment when things started to go wrong.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And again, the one thing that kind of stinks about the bye week coming now is we're not going to have a chance to really break this thing down with Jeff Hafley, with Rich Bisaccia. We're not going to talk to them at least for another week plus. So a lot of time and a lot of water will be under the bridge at that point. But so some of these observations, again, we haven't even talked to Matt LaFleur at this point, than which we're taping this. So trying to figure out what the Packers' reaction to a lot of it is and where they thought some of the seams kind of came undone. We're going to have to still figure that out. But from my vantage point, as I was watching that game defensively, it just seemed like Green Bay was pretty committed to a 4-man rush.
Yep.
You didn't see much blitzing. There weren't any simulated pressures. They moved around Micah Parsons a little bit throughout the front, but there wasn't that threat for the most part. I think Quay did blitz a couple times. I think Edgerrin did blitz a couple times, but it wasn't as much incorporated into the plan in this game as it had been some of the others.
Certainly not with how many snaps there were over the course of 70 minutes. Mm-hmm. You know, we would have thought, you know, that there would have been some more change-ups thrown in there.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But you know, long as, at the end of the day, where Green Bay, I thought by and large, they did a really good job against Prescott. The problem was they only had the 5 quarterback hits against him, the 1 sack, which ended up being a huge play. I mean, it's not your traditional sack,
right?
But it was a huge play in the game in that it kept Prescott from getting into the end zone and ultimately kept Green Bay alive to be able to match or at least have a chance to win, and then obviously match the field goal. But Prescott, in the times in which he was under pressure, seemed to get the ball out just in the nick of time.
Yep.
And then in the instances where the Packers didn't get pressure, Prescott really went to work.
Yeah, Dak Prescott's experience and his savvy and his accuracy, I mean, he showed in this game how big-time a quarterback he is. I mean, he's missing one of his top weapons, if not his top weapon, in CeeDee Lamb. And the Packers certainly had their trouble with George Pickens. Pickens had a big night, but we also saw, you know, guys like Jalen Tolbert and Turpin and these other guys. I mean, Prescott, I think you had said it in Insider Inbox. It was as though he was always a step ahead, because as soon as Micah Parsons was, you know, would beat his guy and was closing in on him, the ball was out.
Yeah.
You know, and the ball wasn't just out, but most of the time it was out very accurately to somebody who was able to make a play for him. It was frustrating in that sense to watch. It felt like as the game went on that the Packers didn't get enough pressure on Dak Prescott, but then when you go back and look at it and you see how many times he just got the ball out so quickly, you have to give him credit. And from Jeff Hafley's perspective up above, if he's watching this and he's seeing the opposing quarterback constantly getting the ball out so fast anytime somebody was closing in on him, you can understand the reluctance to blitz, the reluctance to dial things up, because you don't want to compromise your coverage if they're just going to go 3-step drop and fire the ball all night long. So there was a lot of that kind of chess match stuff and trying to find an answer going on, and Prescott played a big time game. On the other side, I thought Jordan Love played a big time game as well. The turnover deep in your own territory late in the first half, extremely unfortunate. I think the Packers got a little bit, this is just my feeling, that psychologically they got a little bit too wrapped up in the idea of Dallas being able to double up, where Dallas scores on the 95-yard drive and they're going to get the ball coming out at the start of the second half. And because of that possibility of the double up, the Packers got a little too aggressive. You get the first down at the 32-yard line, but after a false start moves you back to the 27 and you're out of timeouts and the clock is, down into the low 20s in terms of seconds left in the first half. You're probably better off going in the locker room there at 13-9, and I know that's easy for me to say, sitting here, but I think it was this whole pressure of feeling like, okay, you can't let the Cowboys double up, right?
Yeah.
And then they ended up doubling up and getting a chance to triple up as it turned out. So that was unfortunate. But the Packers offense, and as we've seen with Jordan Love, when a mistake happens, he shakes it off, he comes out, and he came out in the second half firing. And as much as the Packers were having trouble stopping Prescott, the Cowboys were having just as much trouble stopping Jordan Love and the Packers.
You know what drives me nuts sometimes with Packer fans? I'm a little raw here because I just got done doing Insider Inbox last night. So kind of like if we had to do the show right after you wrote Inbox on Mondays, I'm guessing you'd have a few different thoughts after you get a time to sort of let things marinate a little bit.
Yeah, walking off the plane at 4 a.m. wouldn't have been, after writing that Insider Inbox, wouldn't have been a good time for me to step in front of a microphone. But yes, go ahead.
But what drives me nuts sometimes with fans is, they get so frustrated. And yes, I understand Jordan made a bad interception a week earlier against Cleveland. Yep. And then that whole thing of, again, that series of unfortunate events at the end of the first half, which Matt LaFleur took ownership for wanting to put the foot on the pedal, for probably when the false start happens, maybe at that point packing your bags in because you don't have any timeouts left. You are down to 20 seconds on the clock. Maybe you live to play another day. Yeah,
and 5 yards in that situation when the best you're going to do is field goal range, 5 yards is a big deal, and you have to consider that. But go on.
So the point I want to raise with that is the way that Jordan Love bounced back from that and the way that the defense bounced back from that. If the Packers don't have that response, this isn't even a game. But what happened is the defense did get off the field once, and that's what gave Green Bay a chance to get back into this thing. And when Jordan Love got that ball back in his hands, he got back to his playmakers. Josh Jacobs played some really good football in this game. Emmanuel Wilson played some really good football in this game. The Packers' run game showed up. And in Tucker Kraft and the sprinkling there of Romeo Doubs with the touchdown catches. When I talk about my frustration with fans at times is they focus so much on what the immediate result is, and I don't think they always understand. You're seeing the maturation of young players before your eyes.
Yeah.
Romeo Doubs is as cool, calm, and collected as a receiver as you're going to find in the National Football League. They need that in this offense. Jordan Love, with his cool disposition to things and his ability to let the water kind of go off his shoulder a little bit and focus on the next task at hand, that's an important trait that I think trickles down to the rest of this football team. Offensively, this was their day. As you were in the press conference with Micah Parsons, he said he went up to Jordan Love and thanked him for picking the defense up that day. When you're looking at complimentary football, these are the instances you look at. Special teams had a rough day. Defense had a rough day. But outside of just the end of that first half, offensively, in a game in which Jordan Love could not afford to blink, he kept his straightforward vision and helped this offense succeed. Yeah,
I thought you mentioned Jacobs and Wilson. I thought we maybe saw the best of each of those guys in a Packers uniform. Certainly the best game of Emmanuel Wilson's young career. I thought he was extremely effective, and just in general, the Packers got the running game going. They got both of the running backs involved in the passing game, whether it was screens or checkdowns. And there was a lot to like about what Green Bay's offense did in this game. And as you mentioned, Dobbs had the 3 touchdowns. The end of the game, so Green Bay's defense is up against it in overtime. The Cowboys have first and goal on the 5-yard line after the sideline toe tap catch there by Tolbert incredible throw by Prescott, frankly. Under pressure, he heaves it. It looks like it might just go out of bounds, and Tolbert is able to get it and keep his feet in bounds. So it's 1st and goal at the 5, and the Packers defense has not stopped Dallas since the opening drive of the second half. But they rose up and they were able to force the field goal. Micah Parsons gets the chase down sack, and I think Dak Prescott's going to score on that scramble if Parsons isn't able to catch him. So they force the field goal there. Big moment for Green Bay's defense. Then on the other end, the Packers get all the way to the 12-yard line. They have 1st and 10 on the Dallas 12. Obviously, a touchdown wins the game. A field goal ties the game. The clock is running down. And we do this show a couple of days after the game, so we've seen a lot of the narratives out there. And if there's one narrative about this game that bothers me more than anything, it's that supposedly Matt LaFleur and the Packers weren't trying to win the game there. And just because they weren't able to doesn't mean they weren't trying. I mean, the first play, they try the wide receiver screen to Matthew Golden. They have decent numbers on the outside there, but a block is missed, and Golden gets tackled for a 3-yard loss. Unfortunate, the play wasn't executed all that well, but just because the Packers threw the ball sideways for a screen and not towards the goal line doesn't mean they weren't trying to win the game. So then we hear afterward from Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love. So then on 2nd down, LaFleur is trying to take advantage of the fact that, okay, on the first down play, the Cowboys have had their guys up tight to the line of scrimmage. So if they're going to do that again, we're going to take the shot at the end zone. The Cowboys morph into a cover 2. They drop their coverage into the end zone. There's nothing there for Jordan. He takes the check down to Emmanuel Wilson, who isn't quite able to get back to the line of scrimmage, and the clock is still running. I would say there's an argument to be made there. Maybe Jordan Love needs to throw that ball away rather than take the check down. It's one-on-one on the outside. If Emmanuel Wilson can make the guy miss, then maybe he gets, a few yards, gets out of bounds, whatever. The biggest problem with the final sequence is that Emmanuel Wilson gets tackled with 22 seconds on the clock, and then the 3rd down snap doesn't happen until there are 6 seconds left on the clock. It took 16 seconds. There wasn't the urgency out there on the field to get lined up, to run the play, to take that last shot at the end zone. And quite frankly, the Packers got extremely lucky that there was still 1 second on the clock when the pass to the end zone hit, I believe it was Sanborn in the back, yes. The linebacker, Jack Sanborn. It hit him in the back and fell to the ground. If that ball is tipped or deflected in any way, that last second probably ticks off the clock, and you've got an even greater disappointment on your hands. My overarching point is the final sequence didn't work out. The lack of urgency on 3rd down to get the snap off and not run the clock down as far as the Packers did, that was the biggest problem with that sequence. It wasn't that the Packers weren't trying to win the game and were just settling for the field goal. That is not what was happening there. It was a bad sequence of plays. It was a bad series of downs that didn't go well. But to sit back there and say that Matt LaFleur was being all conservative and wasn't trying to win the game, that is so misguided, and quite frankly, it's lazy. It's frustration at not getting the victory being applied to, the intent to try to win the game wasn't there, and that's I don't have any time for that, and it's been out there way too much as far as the end of this game. I'm sorry, I went on a long monologue there. No. I'll turn it back over to you.
No, it's very much the case, and I think seeing how the Packers rallied there down the stretch, I feel like most of that frustration for fans, and maybe some of it's coming from the media too, is the idea that, okay, well, you won the coin toss, so you elected to kick, so you're trying to put yourself in a position to be able to win the game, right? And you see if your defense can hold, and they did. They kept them to 3 points. So now you're at this point where you just had Brandon McManus hit a 53-yard field goal as time expired in regulation. So once the Packers cross midfield, the thing I'm sure that's going through everybody's mind is, okay, well, we got the 3 in the bag now. Whatever happened on the extra point, we came back, we made good on the 53-yarder, because that's about as high level difficulty as you're going to find for an NFL kicker and a whole operational unit.
Yeah, and McManus absolutely striped that kick too. It
Beautiful.
was right down the middle and probably would have been good from 65 yards.
Yeah, and as somebody said too, I mean, you want to talk about 10 out of 10 just from a pure beauty standpoint. I mean, that thing was right down Broadway.
Yeah.
Nice operation there, and afterwards, McManus commended both Matt Orzik and Daniel Whelan for the whole operation there. So, okay, that all happens. Packers rally. They're down the field. Things are looking up, and you have some strikes to the end zone. But one of the things is now that we're down to this, we go from 15 to 10 minutes, and when it was not, when both teams, no matter what, get a chance to possess the ball, you're going to see some down to the wire overtimes now.
Yeah,
because
no
there
doubt.
Isn't always just going to be a 75-yard touchdown to get things started. It's going to be long, sustained drives that could take 6, 7, 8 minutes. So Green Bay, I felt like in that instance, I mean, Matt LaFleur took ownership for it. He said, we got to be better there. Play calls got to be better, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I think there also is a lot of trust that Jordan Love is going to get this offense where it needs to be. And again, kind of going back to my point earlier, where I think sometimes fans get so wrapped up in what the actual result is, you're not actually seeing what's happening on the field. And Jordan Love is taking absolute command of this offense now. He's catching guys every week with 12 men on the field. There's so many attributes that it's not just about what he learned from Aaron Rodgers. There's a lot that he learned from Aaron Rodgers, and that's a big part of his story. But it's also the way that Matt LaFleur develops quarterbacks and the way the Packers develop their offense. The pieces are coming together. And, yeah, it got really dramatic there at the end. But I guess a part of me never felt like the thing was out of control. And I think a lot of the frustrations that we've heard verbalized in the last few days, I think, are coming mostly out of the standpoint that it was a frustrating game and the Packers weren't able to punch it in at the very end.
Yeah. Here's my question that I'll throw out to you as a hypothetical of sorts. Were you surprised that on 4th and goal from the 4 that the Cowboys didn't go for it in overtime? Because I thought they might, just because their defense had been struggling so much that, okay, if you don't get the touchdown there, the Packers are backed up on their own 4-yard line. You're giving your defense an opportunity there. And I'm not saying that they should have gone for it. I thought it was an interesting question. The way that game had gone and everything, on 4th and goal, you're inside the 5-yard line. Do you go for it there? They obviously chose to kick the field goal. I was just curious if you had any thoughts in that.
I want to take one more look just to see. I want to see what the plays were leading up to that. Sorry, fans. Okay, so Parsons sacked him on 2nd down, and then the pass was incomplete on 3rd.
Yeah.
Okay, my initial reaction to that is no, it didn't surprise me. And the main reason for that is, while you're right about where things were at with the defense, you also saw what was happening with the Packers offense at that point. And yes, they would have been supremely backed up. But if Green Bay does move the ball from that point, chances are it's going to be a long drive that will ultimately lead to a game-winning field goal.
In the end, the Cowboys, ultimately the decision was, we're not going to put our defense in a position where they can lose the game on a field goal. They're only going to lose the game on a touchdown.
Yes.
And it worked it worked out for them. But again, that goes back to the Prescott scramble. I mean, say if Parsons is another step late and Prescott gets to like the 2 or the 1 yard line, and then you're talking 4th and goal from there as opposed to the 4, maybe it's a whole different decision as well. I realize that's all hypothetical stuff. I was just curious.
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess that's where, because I'm looking at it now. I mean, here's the thing: like leading up to the end of the game here, I'm personally perseverating so much on the Packers defense, but the whole second half is 9 plays, 65 yards, touchdown; 8 plays, 65 yards, touchdown; 10 plays, 65 yards, touchdown; 3 plays, 39 yards, game-tying field goal, and then they end up actually having a 13-play drive that leads up to the game-tying field goal again for McManus. So I think it's one of those things that when you're in that type of shootout, 9 straight scoring drives, as you mentioned, a bunch of touchdown drives combined as well. I think you can't take anything for granted. Shoot, the Packers put, what was it? The Cowboys started at their own 5 you're thinking the Packers got 3 straight punts at that point in the second quarter.
Right, and that's the point that you think the
win.
Packers defense is in great position. You know, with the offense has already scored, you're in the lead, you back them up on the 5-yard line, and that's when Dak Prescott came out, drove them all the way down the field, and he sort of announced, like, all right, I came to play tonight, and the Packers defense had trouble on their hands the rest of the game.
By the way, one last thing on all this. Dude, something that drives me absolutely nuts right now, too. Again, this is the Wes is going nuts episode. People, well, they didn't have CeeDee Lamb, so how did the Dallas... George Pickens is a really good football receiver.
Yeah, Pickens is good, and the Packers had trouble.
Did you watch those clips of CeeDee Lamb on the sideline, like picking out the plays that Pickens was going to make explosive?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, there's a lot of like bad juju, so to speak, around Pickens because of how things ended in Pittsburgh, but the guy's always been really, really talented.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, Dak is really good. Pickens is really good. The Packers walked out of there with a tie, and as I also said in Insider Inbox, they're going to go back to Lambeau Field here after the bye. The Packers still have yet to lose at Lambeau Field. And I know what you wrote in Inbox and what you said during Final Thoughts last week. You want to split on the road. It's going to get really weird now with being 0-1-1 on the road. But that being said, one of the arguments I made, the Los Angeles Chargers did a cross-country flight to New York against a Giants team that last week I said was ill-advised in starting Jackson Dart.
3-0 versus 0-3. And welcome to the NFL.
It's very hard to win on the road. So it's not an excuse. I understand the frustration. Fortunately, the Packers are 2-1-1 here going into the bye. And the one thing Green Bay has to do coming out of it, they have to be more consistent. For sure. Everybody agrees with that.
Yes.
They also need to get incredibly more healthy. It's wild what happened in this game, really for both offensive lines, being down a lot of their preferred starters. Green Bay's got work to do.
Yeah.
That's the moral of the story.
One last thing I want to say before we pay some bills. We mentioned Brandon McManus, obviously the 2 clutch kicks that stave off defeat. He was also making tackles on kickoffs. I thought Brandon McManus played a whale of a football game. The blocked extra point was not his fault. The Packers actually changed multiple personnel on the right side of the field goal protection unit after the PAT was blocked. And when McManus is making tackles on kickoffs, the Packers have a lot to figure out and sort out on special teams. That's got to get sorted out. But I just wanted to give a tip of the cap to McManus because that was a whale of a game from a kicker, and the Packers are lucky to have him. But right now, I do need to turn it over to a word from our sponsors. SiriusXM NFL Radio delivers hard-hitting analysis and up-to-the-minute NFL news that true football fanatics need 24/7, 365. At Cousin Subs, we have something for everyone, like our Wisconsin cheese curds, mac and cheese, golden fries, and creamy shakes, all paired with your favorite sub or sub in a bowl. Cousin Subs, 50-plus years of better. Pit Boss Grills, the official grill of Packers tailgating at Lambeau or at your house. Take your game day to the next level with a Pit Boss wood pellet grill. Pit Boss Grills available at Menards. Hey Packers fans, we always knew Lambeau Field was a wonder, but now it's official. Learn more about all the wonders of Wisconsin at travelwisconsin.com/wonders. Welcome back to Packers Unscripted. Wes, last thing before we go, a quick look at where things stand in the NFC North. The Detroit Lions at 3-1, sitting back on top where they've been the last couple of years. The Packers right behind at 2-1-1, Minnesota and Chicago, both 2-2, both getting to 2-2 in very different ways. The Vikings losing across the pond in Ireland to the Steelers, a comeback attempt at the end that comes up short, and the Bears get a blocked field goal on the final play in Las Vegas to hang on and beat the Raiders. So the Bears have wiped out their 0-2 start. The Packers have almost wiped out their 2-0 start, although 2-1-1 is certainly better than 2-2. And everybody's chasing the Detroit Lions again. We're right back where we've been the last couple seasons.
Yeah, it was really funny to watch how this thing played out. Now, by the way, I was mentioning in our last segment the difference between playing home and away. I thought you saw that with Detroit being inside Ford Field, Cleveland trying to go in there and doing what they did and obviously having a much different result than what happened against Green Bay. I give a lot of credit to Minnesota. They kept their head in it. They tried to make some plays. I thought Pittsburgh had a really good plan for Justin Jefferson, allowed them to build that cushion that they ultimately ended up needing. I was a little bit flabbergasted by how Mike Tomlin and the Steelers handled those last 5 minutes of the game.
Yeah, that was a little rough.
But that being said, they did find a way to pull it out. Minnesota falls to 2-2. My other takeaway from that Bears game, Ashton Genty is very, very real. There's a part of me that wonders with Pete Carroll, excuse me. I almost said Steve Carell. It's been a long week.
A guy named Steve Carroll was actually one of my college baseball teammates, by the way.
Was he really?
That's a whole nother.
What did he play?
What's that?
What position?
First base.
Nice.
Yeah.
Power hitter?
Yes, actually.
Nice.
Big guy.
Got to have your power on the corners.
Big guy. Wrote his honors thesis on the economics of baseball, and I proofread it for him.
Oh,
but anyway.
Nice. That's cool.
There we go.
I hope he got an A.
Sorry, but you just mentioned a name like Steve Carroll, and all these memories come back. Steve, I have no idea if you're out there and listening to this, but anyway, you just got your moment in the sun in Packers Unscripted.
Packers Unscripted.
my old
10.
teammate and economics major. Anyway.
But my point I was going to try to make before I ended up botching, one of the most longest tenured head coaches in the National Football League, is the fact that Carroll's offenses, when they have been most successful in Seattle, always had that type of back.
Yeah.
And the offense was built around him. I think Genty can be that guy. But to the Bears' credit, man, they found a way to win that football game. Even though it was a road game, as you mentioned, there's still a lot of Bears fans there. But at the end of the day, you have to be able to pull those out. It's going to be competitive, man. I said it the day after the Packers beat the Lions. I mean, the Lions are not going anywhere.
No.
So, and it's a good thing Green Bay picked up that win, because if you don't do that there, the Lions would be sitting at undefeated here at the quarter pole.
Yeah, and for all of the hair pulling and everything else that's going on, there are 13 games left in this thing. The Packers have played exactly one division game, and they got a win in that one division game. There are 5 division games left. Those are going to be obviously of heightened importance as they always are. But this is going to be a long, tough slog in the NFC North. I think there are a lot of good teams in this mix again, just as there were last year, and it's going to be a long time, in my opinion, before this gets sorted out.
And you got to win the games that are in front of you, man. Baltimore Ravens right now are 1-3 on the season. Kansas City's 2-2, and only one of those teams was going to be able to get the 2 in the win column out of that matchup. It is, as I've said time and time again, it is difficult to win in this league, and records are not created equal. I mean, there was that one statistic too. Spencer Rattler still has not won an NFL game. I think he's 0-10 now as a starting quarterback. The Washington Commanders were flying high, and then Jaden Daniels gets hurt, and now Atlanta, who couldn't move the ball on anybody, ends up having a really strong offensive performance. Drake London finally has a big game for that offense. So
yeah, if you think the Packers have been a little bit of Jekyll and Hyde here in the first month of the regular season, look at what's been going on around the league with whether you're talking about the Falcons or the Panthers or even the Buccaneers to a certain extent, who they're pulling out all these last second victories in the first 3 weeks, and but then they run into Philadelphia, and now the Eagles are sitting there at 4-0.
And to be fair, I mean, this is what good teams do, though, right? Buffalo's 4-0, the Eagles are 4-0. When you are a front runner, when you are a contender, you are consistent. That is the translation.
Yep.
Everybody can do it at a high level in the most cases in this league. It's who does it in all 3 phases on the most consistent basis. That's what the biggest learning lesson has to be for Green Bay out of this first month of the year. This team can compete with anybody. They have the talent to win a Super Bowl this season, but doing it down in, down out, eliminating the mistakes, protecting the football, and taking it away.
Yeah.
As I look at this team going into October, that's where Green Bay needs to improve.
Yeah. Can they reach a level at which they can sustain their level of play on a consistent basis over the course of time? Not that you're not going to have some ups and downs, but the ups and downs through the first 4 weeks have been it's been too much of a swing back and forth, and the Packers need to get to a certain level and even that out, and then I think they can put together the season they're looking for.
And that's the most exciting thing. Offensively, they have the firepower to put up points like they did against Dallas. Defensively, they have the assets there to shut down a team like Detroit. Just getting it all to converge at the same moment.
Absolutely. With that, we'll call it a wrap on this edition of Packers Unscripted. And because it is the bye week, this is our only show this week, so we went a little bit long. Hopefully we made up for it a little bit. We will be back next week when the Packers are back preparing for the Cincinnati Bengals. So for Wes, I am Mike. Thank you for tuning in, everybody, and we will see you next time.